welcome to Embassy TV. I'm Purnima Sharma. In a 6-hour air journey from India, you can reach Turkey, a very beautiful country, Turkey. And today we are going to discuss bilateral trade, art and culture, education and tourism. And today we have to discuss all these aspects a very special guest, Ambassador of Turkey to India, Ambassador Shakir Özkan Torunlar. A very warm welcome to you, sir, to our special program.
Thank you very much.
At the very outset, I would like to ask you, what are the most striking impressions you have about our country?
Well, India is a friend distant from Turkey. Only 5,000 kilometers direct air flight separates us. But rather than that, we have been neighbors. Before the Turks moved from Central Asia to the west, the Himalayas were separating the two nations 1,000 years ago. So now I am in a country serving as ambassador of Turkey, which will have very much commonalities with the people, regardless of their beliefs, ethnicity, origin, and many hundreds of words in the languages. So I am happy to be ambassador of Turkey in Delhi.
So, does the colors of Indian culture overwhelm you? Or classical dance, music, food habits? What is your perception about our country?
Well, I think India is a country which is much more charming for the ladies because they have all the colors in textiles and all the gems as jewelry. But of course, beyond that, with its cultural heritage, the richness in history, archaeology, anthropology, you have many things to attract any citizen of the world. Yeah, I am here for the past 10 months, but I'm trying to enjoy my stay every day in full.
So, sir, what commonalities do you see between India and Turkey?
I think the commonalities that bind two nations, two peoples, are much more than the differences between the two nations. Perhaps the food is very charming in India, and it's also very charming for the Indians, the Turkish food, or the Indians visiting Turkey. For example, yesterday we have served samosa on the National Day reception, but the Indian ambassador in Ankara told me that samosa came to Indian cuisine from the Turks.
So we have food similarity also.
Food, music, culture, language.
So, Ambassador, Turkey is a very hot destination for Bollywood. Many Bollywood films have been shot in Turkey. So, what initiatives, what your country is doing to invite more filmmakers to shoot in your country?
I think the family structures of our two nations are similar. We highly value the status of woman, status of the child in the family. Whichever Turkish village you travel to in Anatolia is not different in those values than the villages you travel or the small towns you travel around India. So the TV series shot in Turkey by the Indian filmmakers may easily attract the Indian audiences in front of the box. But beyond that, you probably have heard we also in Turkish TV channels are broadcasting Indian TV series. 10 days ago, Amir Khan was in Turkey. He was received by President of Turkey, by the Minister of Culture and Tourism of Turkey, and it coincided with the launch of his latest movie in Turkey to the Turkish spectators, Turkish cinema goers.
So, Ambassador, what are the steps or the initiative you have taken so far to strengthen cultural relations?
Well, we must make the distance shorter for cultural exchange. Of course, we have an established mechanism of exchange of student exchange programs. Uh, since many decades, we have Department of Indian Language and Literature in the University of Ankara in Turkey since I believe 1930s, 1940s. We have recently established a Turkish language department in the Jamia Millia Islamia University. We have lecturers appointed by the government of Turkey coming here every year between 3 and 5. It differs, the number differs from year to year. And they teach Turkish language, Turkish literature, grammar to the Indian students. And there's a high demand in both in Turkey, in the university in Turkey, University of Ankara, and also in Jamia Millia for both languages. But if you ask me whether it is sufficient, of course it is not sufficient. For an ambassador, nothing is sufficient. We have to fight for more. So we look forward more Turkish students to learn Indian language because you cannot ignore the language spoken by every one human out of 6 on the world. So we have to learn Indian. We have to teach Indian to our children. But also Turkey is also spoken in many countries, more than 10, 15 countries around the world. Some of them are close to India, and we have common words, common in linguistics. So, and of course, we have to increase the number of translations from our literature because India has a very rich literary treasure, which we also in Turkey we have a strong background of literature. I think the products of Turkish and Indian authors, poets should be translated in the language of the other nation so that people on the street, even they cannot learn Hindi or Turkish, they can learn the culture of and they can learn the literature of the other nation, which will make the two nations more closer. I think both countries, they do very well understand each other's culture. They do respect each other's culture. But we need the key here is the number of visitors from India to Turkey, from Turkey to India should be increased, and a day, one flight per day from Delhi, between Delhi and Istanbul, one flight per day between Mumbai and Istanbul is not enough. If you would like to travel from Istanbul to Delhi as a Turk, you cannot find empty seats on the flights connecting the two cities for the next 1 month or at least 4 or 5 weeks. If we can increase the number of flights between Mumbai, Istanbul, and Delhi and Istanbul to double, if we can increase it by double, I think we can meet the expectations of the Indians and Turks who wish to visit the other country. And there is a high understanding a mutual understanding at the highest level between the President of Turkey and Prime Minister of India that they wanted to raise the number of flights, but they have instructed their technical teams in civil aviation to sit down and discuss the ways and means and the numbers of frequencies, how and when it will be increased. Unfortunately, since 1st of May, when Prime Minister Modi and President Erdogan decided and gave instruction to do so, unfortunately, the civil aviation teams from both countries did not have the chance to sit down. Once they do it, I'm sure there will be no obstacle in front of that.
So, Ambassador, as we have been talking about education and literature, Can you give us a number of students or mid-career professionals, those who are going to Turkey to pursue their education, or the Turkish nationals, that those who are coming to India? Or is there any cultural exchange or education exchange program as far as education sector is concerned?
Unfortunately, to my surprise, the numbers are not very high, but both governments have established understandings written and approved by the two governments. The exchange programs cover periods for every other 3 years. The one we are now implementing covers the years between 2017 2020. It foresees not only exchange of students but exchange of cultural troops, cinema, theater, television, and the host country has the responsibility to facilitate those exchanges. I think throughout my stay, we can put extra efforts on that existing documents.
So, what special initiatives has been taken, or you are planning to take, to ensure that people of both countries understand each other's culture more? So, as far as tourism is concerned, what attracts Indians to Turkey, and what brings Turkish nationals to India?
Well, I did not have the chance to talk one by one each and every 200,000 Indians who have visited Turkey in the years 2015 and 2016. But my impression from the bigger picture is that the Indian tourists visiting Turkey, they feel themselves at home. From the very first moment they land on Turkish soil, and they find the opportunities to discover a land but not a nation. There is nothing to discover with the Turkish nation for an Indian, ordinary Indian, because we are more or less similar nations, only the language is different. But when they visit the tourism destinations or remote parts of Turkey, they enjoy it very much. And Indian tourists, they travel Turkey as a family. They don't want to leave behind their spouses or children, but once they travel to Turkey, they travel with the kids also. And Turkey offers many things for the husband, for the wife, and for the kids, regardless of where they go, including the food.
So, when we talk about bilateral trade, where do you see it heading? What about the present trade volume between both the countries as far as export and import is concerned? And do you see it increasing in the forthcoming years?
I would like to thank to you for this question. I think this is the peak of this interview because both Turkey and India are members to G20 group, which means the richest 20 of the world. India has a GDP about 2 trillion US dollars. Turkey is approximately 1. Together, the two economies make a combined economy of 3.2, 3.3 trillion dollars of GDP, combined figure. But when you check the trade figures between the two nations, it has stuck in a figure between 5.5 and $6.5 billion annually for the past 3-4 years, 5 years. Turkey has much more potential and India has much more potential to increase the bilateral trade volume. Could it be increased? Yes. During visit of President Erdogan on 1st of May, in front of 400 businessmen, both Prime Minister Modi and the President of Turkey, they have put a target of $10 billion to be reached by 2020. Today, we are talking about a figure of $6.5 billion. So $10 billion in the next 3 years. Is it achievable? My reading, yes. It is not a dream. How can it be achieved? if all of us work patiently and well. When I say all of us, that includes me, that includes the Indian ambassador, my good friend in Ankara, the Turkish businessman, the Indian businessman, the bureaucracies in Ankara and in Delhi. If there are any obstacles in front of the expansion of the trade volume, we have to lift those obstacles. One of the ideas that our president put forward here with a view to expanding the trade volume is to make the trade in national currencies, which will make the two economies less dependent on third country currencies. So in a way, another way, we can talk about Turkish lira and Indian rupee. And when it is not sufficient, then of course we can continue the remaining balance of the trade with international currencies such as euro or dollar. But the two countries' businessmen can opt for an exchange of trade exchange in national currencies. It's a method already experienced by Turkey. It's a method already experienced by India before. So it is not. We are not reinventing the wheel again. On the other hand, the Turkish private sector is looking forward to open a contact office in Delhi to learn more about Indian economy. And Indian umbrella organizations in the private sector, such as ASOCHAM or FICCI or CII, have the intention, or they can go and establish a liaison office for the Indian private sector, for the Indian businessmen to learn more and to examine more the Turkish market. And from Istanbul, they can expand their businesses to the regions around Turkey, such as Caucasian countries, Balkans, CIS countries. So Istanbul could be a hub for the Indian business world, and Delhi could be a hub for the Turkish business world. And these are not difficult exercises. You just open a liaison office in Delhi, liaison office in Istanbul, and all the Turkish and Indian private sectors can liaise through these offices. So $10 billion target or beyond is not a dream. It is achievable. India is among the countries, among the first few countries whom we have many things to learn, especially in the IT sector, plus renewable energies. But on the other hand, Turkish economy, in return, could contribute to the two main projects of Prime Minister Modi, which is Make in India. Turkish businessmen are ready to come and to make in India. And the second one, the 100 Smart Cities projects. As everybody very well knows, that Turkish contractors are among the first three in the world who have completed remarkable infrastructure projects from North African countries to Gulf, from Central Asian republics to Moscow to everywhere around the world. Ports, tunnels, roads, railways, highways, and of course housing. And in the India-Turkish Business Forum, Prime Minister Modi has invited Turkish contractors to come and to contribute to the 50 million housing projects, which is the target of the government of India for the next 5 years or 6 years. So Turkish contractors are ready to come here. But we have also a lot to learn from India, especially in the fields, in the sectors that India has a leading and prominent role, such as IT and energy.
So before we conclude this interview, I would like to ask you that what is the fondest memory that you would like to take back once you complete your term in India?
the best answer for this question maybe at the end of the tour and at the end of my tour in India, not now. 10 months is very short.
So thank you so much, Ambassador, for talking to Embassy TV and sharing your viewpoints on various aspects of tourism, culture, trade, and education. Thank you so much for talking to us. It's a pleasure talking to you.